Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, the 5th of February 2020, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, and myself, Brian Gerrish. Health warning, probably for the first slide.
Well, absolutely, because we've got Boris on there. So the UN Climate Change Conference UK 2020 has been launched. It's in partnership with Italy. This is the COP26 climate conference. Boris launched it yesterday. It's going to take place in Glasgow in November. He began by giving a potted history of the electric taxi cab. So that's good. And he said that we've poured so much CO2 into the atmosphere collectively that our entire planet is swaddled in a great tea cozy of the stuff.
Okay.
Yes.
That sounds
yes.
Sounds good language.
He said that CO2 levels are at a level not seen since 3 million years ago when there were trees in Antarctica. And he said that that's why that the UK has pledged to deliver net zero by 2050. And we're the first major economy to make that commitment. And he thinks it's the right thing to do. And he thinks it's quite proper that should we be the first, he thinks that that's quite proper because as we were the first to industrialize, really he seems to be saying we should be the first to deindustrialize again afterwards.
Right.
Okay. You'll be glad to know that he then sat down with David Attenborough in front of some school children and they were pretty disgustingly condescending to them. And told them that really this all had to be done because they would be dead otherwise.
Yeah, this is, we could say this has an adverse impact on the minds of these children. This is actually abusing those children, isn't it?
That's how I saw it, yes, absolutely. But you'll be glad to know that they have launched the COP26 website at last. Here it is. It looks really stunning. And 9th to the 20th of November 2020, Glasgow, COP26 in partnership with Italy. Well, there you go. What more can I say about it? It's purple and green.
Good common purpose colours.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, anyway, as we mentioned on Monday, of course, Claire Perry was sacked. She was supposed to be leading this whole COP26 thing. She was sacked just before the weekend. Pretty unhappy about that. She had, at least over the weekend, there were press reports that she was threatening to sue the government for sacking her. And just to remember, of course, she had been a Tory MP until the general election in December, and she stood down as a Tory MP in order to take this job. No sooner has she taken the job than she's fired. She basically said yesterday, that Boris didn't really get climate change. But she said the cabinet subcommittee on climate that this was in an open letter that she wrote to Boris Johnson. The cabinet subcommittee on climate that you promised to chair and which I was to attend has not met once. In the absence of your promised leadership, departments have fought internal Whitehall battles over who's responsible and accountable for the conference. And the question is which Whitehall department has ended up with responsibility for the conference. Well, we have to go back to the website for that. And highlight the fact that it is the Cabinet Office. So this is going to be run absolutely centrally from central government. Its success or failure can only end up with the Cabinet Office and Boris Johnson personally, therefore. Claire Fox may have lost her job. The question is, Claire Perry may have lost her job, but the question is who's going to take it over? David Cameron was offered the job, but he has basically said, no thanks, don't want it.
Right.
I can't imagine why. It could be something to do with the amount of jetting around the world that he's doing at the moment, and it might appear to be a little bit hypocritical for him to take that job.
Yeah, so he's busy jetting around the world with his security team leaving their Glock pistols in toilets.
Yes, apparently that seems to be the case. This is what happened on a flight across the Atlantic. His security detail left a gun in the toilets on the aircraft.
Together with his passport, I understand.
With David Cameron's passport, yes. So that guy, I don't imagine, will be staying in his job for too long.
Well, hopefully not.
So what else was announced? Here we go. We are going to end the sale of new petrol and diesel and hybrid cars by 2035. It was originally 2040, so they've moved that forward 5 years. No more internal combustion engine cars. And many people yesterday, when this was announced, were wondering where the shortfall in tax revenue would come from. Maybe we'll get a clue in a second. Well, there's been some response on the internet to this. This is the Adam Smith Institute. Government insists electric cars will still be terrible in 2035. This is Tim Worstel, who's saying the ban is thus an admission and insistence from government that non-internal combustion engine cars are going to remain pretty terrible, but we're going to be forced to have them. Aren't we the lucky ones? His point being that you know, if there needs to be a ban, then clearly there's no demand for electric cars. They're basically rubbish, and
because otherwise people would be rushing out to buy them.
Well, exactly. That's his point. Now he's saying, "Aren't we the lucky ones?" He's with sarcasm. I suspect that actually we're not going to be the lucky ones, because the question of where is the shortfall in tax revenue going to come from? We may get a hint from what's going on in Europe with respect to vehicle charging prices, which are going up or have gone up by 500% in January, at the end of January. And so this article, I apologise to the person who this is a quote from, because I can't remember who it was, but the quote was that under the EU's Green New Deal transportation plan, you can drive from Paris to Madrid in only 5 days, and it will only cost you €350. This is based on this new pricing from Ionity. So, you know, this is a pretty incredible situation that, you know, you can drive from Paris to Madrid in a day, perhaps, but by 2035, it'll take 5 days to get there.
It'll be slower.
On the roads.
Ultimately, you can use a horse and you can do it in 50 days, and that's fine.
Well, absolutely. So if this is the situation, and the prices are going to go up to this degree, and also in the media today, by the way, there was a report about a Scottish community where the local council had insisted that instead of having gas-fired heating boilers in their homes, they had to have electrical boilers instead. And this is something which the UK government is pursuing, this idea that gas-fired boilers will be banned from future developments. And in fact, I believe by 2040, they're expecting to have all gas-fired boilers removed from every property in the country. So this Scottish community has found themselves subject to the most draconian electricity price rises, just like Ionity has done with the car charging on the continent of Europe. And as a result, they're having to go to food banks in order to make up for the fact that they have no money to pay for food.
This is forcing people into austerity, forcing people into poverty.
Absolutely, and of course, if the prices for charging electric cars are going to go through the roof, as Ionity has done, this effectively is the end of any personal liberty with respect to transport. So you're not going to be able to drive yourself at all. You're basically not going to be able to. Most people will not be able to afford it.
No.
So I'm going to bring Greta back on screen at the moment here, because this of course is what she said a couple of weeks ago. Until we have the technologies that at scale can put our emissions to minus, then we must forget about net zero. We need real zero. And I've just wondered, when I was talking to Patrick Henningsen yesterday, I just wondered, was she actually aware, or is this a suggestion that there is some awareness that, of course, net zero is basically a financial shell game? It's not real. What Boris has launched here, this 2050 target for net zero, is a financial bubble that's being built.
To allow the whole tax system to come in on
but it's also, it's much
tax.
broader than that. Yes, yes, exactly. Carbon tax and other financial instruments which are going to help maintain this financial system that really shouldn't be in existence at this point.
Another scam, yeah. Just coming back to your start, Mike, Boris Johnson talking about trees and how shocking it was there were a lot of trees, but it's the trees that use the CO2 to produce oxygen that we live on, if I'm correct from my biology and chemistry in the early days. So the CO2 is needed because that ultimately produces the oxygen. The plants produce the oxygen. And somebody's already pointed out in our chat box that the figure for CO2 in the environment is 0.04%. I think it's 0.039% is the accurate figure. And most of the people who are believing the government's climate change agenda based on CO2 have no idea what the real figure of CO2 in the environment is. I heard a couple of days ago that some people, when they were questioned, so this is people campaigning to stop this terrible climate change, believed that the proportion of CO2 in the environment was 25%. So if you want to take on this false man-made climate change agenda, good start is this figure of how much CO2 is actually in the atmosphere, and of course the fact that plant life needs it to survive, and ultimately the plant life produces the O2 that we need. But maybe the agenda is that carbon-based life forms like us are going to be removed.
Well, there's a question of what carbon neutral means, isn't there?
Indeed.
Yes.
Well, climate change agenda, is it real? Well, it certainly is, because last couple of days this story emerged. This is Fairbourne on the west coast of Wales. It's a village in Barmouth Bay, north of Aberystwyth. And basically the villagers have been told that their village is going to be abandoned because of rises in sea level as a result of climate change. This is not a fabricated story. This is absolutely real, and the effect of this already on the village is just astonishing. So what they've actually been saying is that the village is going to be decommissioned, and all of that is based on the lie of man-made climate change and predictions of rising sea levels. So if we come into a little bit of the text and have a look here, it says Gwynedd Council say the discussions are ongoing to determine the best and safest way of executing their plan to relocate residents before 2054, when they say sea level rises and changing weather patterns will mean it will not be possible to further bolster the village's sea defences, a point when the risk to residents will significantly increase. And then I've highlighted a bit because it said it's important to stress that Gwynedd Council has not decided to decommission Fairbourne. While decommissioning has been suggested, no firm decision has been made, but they've already declared to the villagers that they're not going to give them any further help with sea defences. And the result of this has been staggering, because of course instantly their property values have dropped to nothing. And what is all this based on? Well, it's based on the fact that you now have people that are believing the lie of man-made climate change. Councillor Wager here added, climate change is happening, and it is unfortunately only a matter of time before it has a very real human impact on coastal communities like Fairbourne. And of course, he's helping to drive that impact by simply stating, well, we're going to abandon you. But what do the villagers say? They say, with their local knowledge, they perfectly understand from time to time they're flooded. They even say we believe in climate change, but they're saying we just don't know where all these figures are coming from. Well, here's a little bit more. Obviously, some of the residents commenting, and they tell an interesting story. These two gentlemen said first they, the council, closed the toilets, and it took the local villagers to take over the running of the toilets. Why were the toilets so important? Well, of course, this is an area for tourism, and the fact you're shutting down conveniences for people visiting was a big impact. So local villagers had to take that over, but they've also observed other strange things, such as clay being removed at the base of the seawall, which nobody can find an explanation for at the moment. Why would you want to do this? Because the seawall is an important defence for them. It's almost as if things are being deliberately undermined to help the agenda. So let's bring in this comment from the article. What is without doubt, however, is that climate change has already had an effect on the village, because I'm told it's driven the council and other bodies behind the shoreline management plan into a decision which will destroy it. You can't get a mortgage here anymore. So this thing is now becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy. But what is it all based on? Well, you've got to go to the government website, and it's exploratory sea level projections for the UK to 2300. And then actually there's two reports, one from the Met Office and one from the Environment Office. We decided to take a little look at the Met Office report, and let's bring it on screen. So it says that this project has developed new projections of mean and extreme sea levels, the combined height of mean sea level, tide and surge, but not including waves, to the year 2300. That's what it claims. The information is crucial for long-term planning, and this is a 2-page leaflet, and on the right of your screen there you can see that they're talking about a variety of rises from 0 meter to 1.7, 0.2 to 2.1, or 0.7 to 3.6. What those figures give you a vague indication of is how uncertain this data and the projections that they've made from it, Mike.
That's quite a range, 0.7 meters to 3.6 meters.
Indeed, yeah. So we've only been able to have a quick look at this morning, and we're going to ask for people out there who are statisticians to have a look at these reports yourself, but we'll just give you some idea of why we are so skeptical. Before I just give you a bit of the detail, look at the top banner there, because although this is the Met Office behind this data, it's been taken up with the Environment Agency, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, the Welsh Government and the Scottish Environment Protection Agency. Well, this is one of the things we picked up. It says the main problem in creating climate change predictions beyond 2100 is the availability of model simulations this far into the future. To overcome this, a simpler climate model was used to extend the complex model simulations. Well, I just put a banner in here and perhaps we can talk about it, Mike. We didn't have a suitable complex model, so we fudged the analysis by using a simpler one.
Yeah, was it the problem that the complex model didn't produce the results that they wanted?
Not only that it didn't produce the results, but it didn't go far enough into the future. So remember that it isn't 2100 that's produced all of this, it's the prediction to 2300, but we're already decommissioning a village and we don't even know the accuracy of the data.
So, but do we have any understanding of the scientific basis upon which this new model was developed?
A little bit and not a lot.
Right.
Let's have a look at that. There's a lot to discuss. Just put a headline in here for the Met Office, and we did speak to the Met Office this morning, and they say they're going to come back with a response. We'll see. We're saying that the Met Office is certain that they're uncertain about the accuracy of their modelling.
Oh.
So these are some of the paragraphs from their own report. So we've got data and methods. One of the main limitations to exploring climate change predictions beyond 2100 is the availability of climate model simulations. So this is the baseline. They start by saying, well, we really haven't got the ability to do it, and they're going to use simpler models, but uncertainty, sources and considerations. Predictions of 21st century wave climate are inherently uncertain. Now, the wave predictions, you could say, are additional to the supposed rise in height of sea levels, but nevertheless, as we get into the report, uncertainty.
But this is affecting people's lives.
It's affecting people's lives to the extent they now live in homes, Mike, which have zero value. And when we pointed that out to the Met Office, I have to say they got a little bit wobbly that, well, actually the problem wasn't the Met Office, it was the Environment Agency.
Right.
So just add a bit more to that on screen. Natural climate variability. The variability in the natural climate should also be considered. Well, that's pretty good. It takes a scientist to tell us that the weather's variable. And what have we got? Gaps in understanding. And they say another specific gap in the existing research is the consideration of the retreat of Arctic sea ice. So they're admitting that they don't really know what's going on, although the BBC would have us believe that all the polar bears are going to die because the ice is retreating at such a rapid rate. Every direction you go in this, you find that the thing has less and less proper foundations, but they are now decommissioning a whole village based on this uncertain data, some of the locals calling it a pack of lies.
And I didn't see in any of those quotes you put up, I didn't see anything about confidence.
No, and we've specifically challenged the Met Office over the confidence of the data and the analysis that's been used on the data. And we also want to ask what consideration has been given to bona fide scientific papers by other well-qualified people who say that the sea level is not going to rise within these ranges. But nevertheless, people sitting in valueless homes, probably their livelihoods about to be wrecked because some people won't want to go there for fear of being flooded out in the summer. This is scaremongering on an unbelievable scale, really.
Well, here's Sajid Javid, who of course is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and the Treasury has published a letter that he wrote to the Treasury Select Committee. He wrote the letter in December because the appointment was made in December, but the letter has been published yesterday, and the letter was informing the Treasury Select Committee that Andrew Bailey has been appointed the new Governor of the Bank of England, who replaces Mark Carney, who's heading off to bigger and better things. As United Nations climate czar, he's also going to be the British climate czar, effectively, by offering advice for COP26. So here is Andrew Bailey, well, he is currently Chief Executive of the Financial Conduct Authority. He studied history at Queen's College, Cambridge. He then did a PhD in economic history. He then went to the London School of Economics before joining the Bank of England in 1985. So he's been there since, more or less. He eventually, as I say, became Chief Executive of the Financial Conduct Authority. They published their climate change regulations in November last year, or October last year, sorry. And they said, we have an important role to play in creating an environment where firms can manage the risks from moving to a greener economy and capture the opportunities to benefit companies. And he said that these include issuers, climate change disclosures, regulated firms, integration of climate change risk and opportunities into their decision making, and consumers' access to green financial products and services. Because, of course, in order to capture the opportunities to benefit consumers, as Mark Carney has been saying in many of his outgoing speeches, financial institutions are going to have to absolutely get on this green bandwagon and make sure that they are not offering credit to any companies that aren't fulfilling their obligations under various Green New Deals that are being built at the moment.
We can't manage the roads properly. We can't fill the potholes. We can't run any decent medical system. We can't run the schools. We can't run defence. We can't execute a proper Brexit. But all these people, Mike, sitting in meetings behind closed doors, that they are going to save us from a supposed climate change, which they allege is happening. And we've got a mix of government sitting with big business and big banks.
Yeah, but you don't need to worry about potholes, because soon we won't need cars. We won't have cars, and there'll be no need to fill them.
Won't need to travel.
Indeed. Okay, if you like what the UK column is doing and you would like to support us, then please head over to ukcolumn.org/community. There are various options for doing that, for helping us out there, and your help would be much appreciated and much needed. Now, as we reported a few days ago, the Metropolitan Police has rolled out, or at least is in the process of rolling out, the operational use of live facial recognition in London. They say that the use of live facial recognition will be intelligence-led and deployed to specific locations in London, and it will help tackle serious crime, including serious violence, gun and knife crime, child sexual exploitation, and help protect the vulnerable. Now, of course, no sooner was this announcement made than another known wolf under active surveillance by the police carried out a so-called terror-related stabbing. So the timing was very interesting, but this was all about safety. As Nick F. Graves said, as a modern police force, I believe that we have a duty to use new technologies to keep people safe in London. Right. Well, they couldn't keep people safe from someone that they were in active surveillance of. So,
well, maybe that's because his face didn't pop up on a CCTV. They were following him, but because his face didn't pop up on the camera, they couldn't do anything.
Well, I don't know. Well, look, why am I bringing this up again? This is why. We have a A bill to prohibit the use of automated facial recognition technology in public places and to provide for a review of its use. This is a private member's bill. It began in the House of Lords and submitted by Lord Clement Jones. It had its first reading yesterday. Now, it is a private member's bill, and private members' bills generally don't make much progress through the process without government support or without massive public backing. So I'm just going to say to everybody watching this that if you think this is an important subject and you think that this bill is worthwhile, because it really is about putting a stop to this until there's been some proper consultation on it, then it might be worthwhile writing to your MP and supporting Lord Clement Jones here and getting some momentum behind this bill and see whether, so that's the Automated Facial Recognition Technology Moratorium and Review Bill. Yeah. If anybody would like to do that.
So people commenting at the moment and saying this is all about keeping people under surveillance, and I think we don't believe when the police say they're going to delete images. This is all about data collection on people living in the United Kingdom. But one thing's for sure, will we see separation of powers dealing with this problem? Issues of separation of powers being debated, unlikely. Will we see the courts doing something? Pretty unlikely. But it has been very sad because in the last couple of days there's been a fire at the Law Society, and of course the BBC thought this was absolutely terrible, so we've got a nice article on it. Law Society fire, historic library avoids serious damage. So the good news is that all of the historical documents that the lawyers have assembled over the years of their great profession, those have luckily survived the fire. But we were informed yesterday that unfortunately quite a lot of other records have disappeared now. They've been burnt. And I think a few people who were a little bit suspicious said, oh dear, could it be that important records have disappeared? Well, there's no comment about that, but this was the comment that the blaze destroyed the upper floors of 114 Chancery Lane, but they didn't spread to the next door building, 113, which actually held the library for the Law Society. So a few emotive pictures from the BBC. But how many people know what the Law Society really does? Because this is the key issue. It says our Royal Charter still provides the constitutional basis for much of our corporate governance. So now we've got a mixture of the law and big business. It goes on talking about the Principal 1845 Charter. Just encourage people to go and research this themselves. And this caught my eye, our purpose and vision to be the voice of solicitors, to drive excellence in the profession and to safeguard the rule of law. And they're going to have a valued profession delivering the highest quality legal services in the public interest, and they're going to advance the rule of law, Mike.
Good.
Okay, so this is one of the men quoted, the chief executive, Paul Tennant. And what did he have to say? He said he was extremely upset that the fire had broken out in a wonderful building. And there were some other quotes which we'll say we're not sure whether he said or not, but they're attributed to his spokesperson at the minimum. The library holds a lot of very special memories for the legal profession. And I think we're going to say we're sure it does, because at the end of the day, this is how Britain's law has really been overtaken by a new form of law. But he's a remarkable man. He was a senior housing professional, 35 years, an experienced transformational leader, providing vision, ambition and direction with a track record of achieving culture change, inspiring and encouraging people, an innovative thinker, challenging organisations to deliver more and drive changes. So I wonder what he's going to be doing with the Law Society and law in this country. Just get people to think a bit about this. Paul has experience of influencing government policy and was invited to become a member of Lord Heseltine's Regeneration Task Force. He's a chair of the Procurement Consortia and a board member of the Chartered Institute of Housing in Canada, where he lectures on transformation and cultural change. So is this man going to be upholding law, or is he going to be changing policy? and how it affects us, we simply have no idea. But this is what the public tells us about the state of law in this country. Common law no longer taught in law schools, having been replaced by European law. Solicitors and barristers often fail to work on instruction from their client and collude with the court and prosecution to undermine justice and fair trials for their own clients. Techniques include concealing evidence, failing to act, misleading advice, the late service of vital paperwork, use of low-grade legal executives for important cases, and a lot more. And of course, we've got judges sitting in their own secret chambers, star chamber, where you've got neither the public present nor the press. And this is, of course, used in the family courts. And we know that children are simply taken from parents with no witnesses whatsoever to the proceedings. Judges running the court as a private empire, failing to inform juries that they alone have the right to reach whatever decision they see fit, including annulling bad law. So a jury, immensely powerful body, but usually they're bullied into submission, into thinking that the judge holds the power in the court. And the legal profession hide from the public that many courts are in fact places of business having nothing to do with law. And we know a key example of that is for the collection of council tax via magistrates' courts, because we've hold video where the court staff are explaining that is the procedure. The local council simply hires the venue. And a couple of key ones here: far from a body of upstanding members of society, judges and senior legal professions have their own track record of crime, corruption and perversion. Many cases of complaint against the legal profession are simply ignored, binned or dismissed. To protect the profession, the police will not investigate because they appear scared of the judiciary, and the legal system is clearly not about truth and justice. It's a corrupt business to create excessive wealth and power. Now, these are some of the claims coming in from the general public. Do we believe these? I'm afraid we do, because they are presented with evidence showing that this is the case. But most people won't worry, because we've got bodies who are doing the protection work for us. And this is one of them: Spotlight on Corruption, working to end corruption within the UK, wherever it finds it, Mike. So this is good. We just had a look at them. They're independent, of course. And one of the big funders is Open Society. So that's all looking promising. Here's a little bit about the chairman of the board. You find that she's written a number of research reports for Transparency International, giving evidence on corruption risks to parliamentary select committees, and advised the UK Department for International Development and the UK Cabinet Office. So all independent, trustworthy, that's good. And here's Transparency International. They're doing the same thing in the UK and on a global scale. They're protecting us from corruption. And just fascinating that if we have a little look at what they're doing, it got very interesting. They're having a look at industry integrity. Our focus on reducing corruption risks in the arms industry will continue to be underpinned by the Defence Companies Index. And they're also doing some special work in at the bottom of your screen, Europe, including Ukraine, and opening a new program in Armenia on conflict and insecurity. They're looking at defence links between defence corruption and insecurity. And if we get a little deeper into it, it gets very interesting, because in September 2018, we published 6 red flags, the most frequent corruption risks in Ukraine's defence procurement, a report based on research conducted by both London-based defence and security programme researchers and NATO, the defence-specific NGO in Ukraine. So we've got people working with the government. We know that we've got our own government very active in Ukraine, but these are the people protecting us from corruption. So who funds them? Well, it gets interesting, because top of the list, or second on the list there, we've got the European Union under climate change.
Yeah, well, But the biggest funder is the Department for International Development.
Thank you. Who are the people who've got most interested at the moment in Eastern Europe?
Yeah.
And if we just bring in an arrow, oh dear, up pops Open Society again.
So, yes.
Yes, okay. So if we have a look at the second page of who's funding them, here we've got the Foreign Commonwealth Office, UK Conflict Stability and Security Fund.
Oh, that's the same fund that White Helmets seem to get money from?
Yes, it's fascinating. And we've got Open Society popping up in here again. So the British government that's involved in all this stuff, we shouldn't worry, Mike, because they are really helping assess themselves and their cleaner corruption.
Good.
So a fire, what more can we tell you? Well, this organisation is also involved in healthcare, and of course GlaxoSmithKline is one of the funders for that as well.
Yeah, good.
Law and Order UK.
Good, excellent. Well, one of the other things we mentioned on Monday was Exercise Defender Europe 20, the UK, the British Army, has now appeared in Belgium to take part in that. Now, if we remember, that's a US Army-led joint multinational training exercise, including 2,500 UK service personnel. This is the largest deployment of troops from the United States to Europe since the Reforger exercises of the Cold War. And we highlighted this article from Newsweek, which was really making the point, just to quote the author here, who's William Arkin, the journalist, former US Army intelligence officer, saying that over 5 months from May until the end of September last year, 93 separate military exercises were held with forces operating continuously in, above and around 29 countries. All 93 exercises were aimed at Russia. And he said that overall, more than 50,000 NATO and allied military personnel were in drills and activity against Russia last year. So that's continuing into this year. So let's bring some good news in, Brian, because of course you will be very excited to know that the P-8A, the Poseidon aircraft, the first one of the £3 billion contract, has arrived in the UK. These, of course, are submarine hunting aircraft. They've touched down in the UK for the first time. There are going to be 9. Did I say it was 9 of these?
You did, yeah.
Yes. And they're expected to be, the full orders expected to be delivered by the end of 2021. The Ministry of Defence says that the UK's purchase of the Poseidon is in response to increased threats, such as Russian submarine activity in the Atlantic, returning to Cold War levels, while China is also investing heavily in Arctic facilities, infrastructure and ice-capable ships. So Russia and China is the problem here. And here we have Anne-Marie Trevelyan basically saying the UK will not stand by if peace in the Arctic region is threatened. So it's good to know that the arrival of the Poseidon aircraft is once again being pointed towards Russia. So we've got military exercises, we've got aircraft being deployed towards Russia. Yep. Russia is the target. What kind of response are we supposed to expect from Russia?
Well, I think the Russians will carry on as normal, Mike, because the bit we've got to remind people of is that all of if we talk about the maritime patrol aircraft, which the Poseidon is a maritime patrol aircraft, all of our Nimrod aircraft were simply destroyed and all the training facilities destroyed, all the simulators were destroyed. We've been, nearly 10 years now, I think it is, without any form of maritime patrol aircraft. So we have these new aircraft arriving, of course, not built in UK. That's somebody else is taking all the profit, all of the taxpayers' money. But we don't have any experienced personnel anymore because all of that experience of detecting and tracking the Russian submarines, that's all evaporated. So now we've got an aircraft, but the level of experience and capability in the crews will be very, very low indeed, and that's going to take a number of years to build up. And of course, what they're admitting, if these aircraft are now to protect the UK nuclear deterrent, is while we didn't have any aircraft, we weren't protecting the nuclear deterrent, which is treason by the government because it was a willful act. Why am I saying this? Because as we see the constant ramp up for some form of war with Russia, the reality is that the British Armed Forces are in no condition to fight that war. And I believe this is why we're seeing the use of proxy troops via the Eastern European states, which is coming more to the fore.
But that can't be right, Brian, because Anne-Marie Trevelyan went on to say, our Poseidon fleet will soon join an integrated UK force of fighter jets, ships and submarines, helicopters and highly trained Royal Marines ready to operate in Arctic conditions.
Well, that's because it was on the script she was given, Mike. I'm very happy to debate it with her live. And of course, another factor that's very, very interesting in the subject of UK defence is that we understand that the parachute regiment is going to be integrated into special forces. Why would you want this? Well, because of course, the intention is that special force activities are going to be used much more widely across all of the eastern states, because you need those people on the ground to train the troops who are going to be the cannon fodder in the front line, because Britain doesn't have the troops, and even the Germans at the moment are completely are at inadequate force levels. So we've got a propaganda exercise going that we're ramping up the hype against Russia, but behind the scenes there isn't anything except the build-up of EU Defence Union.
Indeed.
We'll leave it there. I'll just say thank you very much for all the comments that came in while we've been delivering the news today. There were some very interesting ones. I'll just remind you of that CO2 figure again. So the CO2 in the atmosphere, 0.04%. And the reason that this is so significant, of course, is that we're being told that that nasty CO2 is causing all of the climate change, but in reality the plants need it to produce us oxygen. So think about challenging a few of the activists with that one. And somebody else also pointed out that while we're talking about the decommissioning of Fairborn in Wales, it reminded them of the flooding of the Somerset levels, to which our response is, you're absolutely right, because the rewilding of UK is one of the key plans under the new Agenda 2030 plans, but we'll be speaking more of that in due course. That's it for today. Thank you for joining us. We will be back at the same time on Friday.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.